I don't mind being older. I don't even mind the fact that my back hurts and my knees kind of hurt and stuff like that. Like, I don't mind going to bed early because it's whatever. That's fine. I would mind if I got to the point where I calcified so much that I wasn't open to new, beautiful, true things or something like that. That's the thing that I feel like young people don't have to do that because it's all new. But like as you get older, you do have to fight against like, you know, thinking like, I didn't like reggae when I was 22. Maybe 22-year-old me was wrong. Let's give it another shot. And trying to listen to it like a new person that doesn't have all this other baggage. It's impossible to do, but like you gotta try, because the second you stop trying, it all calcifies real fast. And that's what I'm really trying to avoid.
Okay, hi, hello, how's it going? I hope you're doing well. It's good to talk to you. I'm back with another episode of this podcast. So this week I spoke to Smiling Strange, also known as Kyle. You probably know, makes these videos where he's walking and talking, and they are really conversational, and it felt like this week we were on a long walk together talking. And we cover a lot of ground on this walk. He's a musician, and a lot of his videos are about music. And he also hosts this podcast that I listen to a bunch of episodes of, and he has a great co-host, and they're really fun to listen to. And he's really an interesting guy who's super smart and fun to talk to, which you'll hear in a second. Yeah, we really get into a lot of areas here. We talk about music discovery and developing taste and not calcifying and, the taste musically and otherwise from when we were younger, and generational shifts, millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and some differences. And he has a great take on internet culture, and we get into that, of the internet that we grew up on, the written internet as he calls it, to now. And then we talk about cassette tapes. We talk about the economics of China a little bit at the end there. So buckle up, because you're in for a treat. I really hope that you let us know if you listen and what you thought, because I really enjoyed talking to him, and I hope you check out his videos and his podcast too. I can't even remember how we connected. I think I saw one of his videos, I think on Sufjan, and we had a really nice conversation. So here is that you're about to hear, and we recorded it just last week. Yeah, let us know if you listen, and I'll talk to you really soon.
You're not attached to the seasons like the rest of us out here in the real world. Like, it was nice today. It's going to be sunny and like 70. But that like means something to me because I live in Portland. Right. LA, it's like, oh no, that's just Tuesday. That's what it is,
I know, it's very disorienting. I'm from Michigan, and then I moved here from New York. So even though I've lived here for 6 years, it's just very hard to tell time. Like just happened. Like I got so disoriented. Like, oh, that's funny, he's wearing a sweater. Like, but then I'm like, it's regular time to be wearing a sweater.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, that's got to be the weirdest part about being in LA is it's like, I mean, what you're talking about, that's like being in a casino. They have no windows. Yeah. They pump in the oxygen. There's no clocks on the wall. You don't know what's going on. LA's a strange place. I find it fascinating because it's like somebody wrote, I think it's Baudrillard wrote in his book America that like LA is wholly inauthentic. Like even the palm trees aren't real. Like everything about LA is somehow like inauthentic. But because of that, it becomes a totally uniquely authentic experience that like LA is this kind of amalgamation of a bunch of like impulses, inauthentic impulses that creates a fully authentic thing on the other end of it. And it's like, oh, I think that's why it exists in the popular imagination so much,
Yeah, I'm like staring out into space at the non-native palm tree.
Exactly.
I feel like I need to turn that around in my head a bunch and do like a deep dive on. I haven't heard that.
We were talking about it with some friends yesterday too. It's like the other part of it, it's like, it's the nicest weather of any city in the world, possibly, right? And the least walkable city. And like, I think only America could ever do that, where they'd be like, all right, this is the one place where you could pretty much walk 12 months of the year and it's always going to be nice out. Let's make everybody drive in a car. And it's like, that's a wild impulse.
Well, unless you're me, because you know what? I find a way. I wrote that down. That's in my copious notes about you. We share a few things. We both seem to be walkers. That's a big, big thing for, turns out, both of us.
It's my number one advice when people ask like how to get out of a rut or like any sort of exercise thing. I'm like, just if you have an hour that you can walk a day, which it seems like a lot, but there's a lot of hours out there. Just walk for an hour. I tore my Achilles a couple years back playing basketball, and yeah, it sucked, dude. I would not recommend tearing your Achilles. In case you're wondering whether or not you should do it, don't. And it took me months to like be able to walk again. And then it was this very slow process of like retraining my foot to like bend the right way. And
oh man,
it was a whole thing. But that's kind of what started that process of just kind of walking around was like, this is the only exercise I trust right now. And I'm just trying to build up all that muscle mass again.
Yeah.
And I just fall in love with it.
It's not lost on me. Like I'm sure for you when I am walking or just doing anything, like how much it feeds me, or really like, you know, if I'm like feeling weird, if I just go on a walk and like you know, you were talking a little bit about how you make the videos and your process with that. And similarly, like I'm doing a lot on my walks, you know, like, I edit the podcast walking, I edit my writing walking, like I'll listen to things and then I'll like put notes in. And I loved your show. You are a natural communicator.
I always tell people the same thing. It's like, if you're not going to do your homework, you got to get good at talking. And I didn't
totally. Oh man, well said.
You got to be able to talk your way out of something, you know?
That's how I've gotten to where I am. You just put it into words. Yeah. That's very well said. And you certainly do. I mean, you mentioned like some of the pros and some of the, you know, it seems to be that you were a bit of a ringer guy and a Marin guy. And so you, like myself, so you have some of these influences for sure, but just there's nothing better, you know, than walking and talking, you know. That's kind of
that I miss when you talk about like Marin and like Bill Simmons way back in the day. Like these were, you know, I was listening in 2007, 2008 when I was delivering pizzas and stuff like that. And I would drive around and listen to music. And I started listening to podcasts. I'm like, oh, this is really cool. And then it took until like Serial got big for everyone to kind of jump on board. And now they are like the legitimate source of news. But like, I really miss that little era from like 2008 through 2010 where everybody that was on a podcast was kind of like, I don't know why I'm doing this. Nobody's going to listen to this. I can just kind of say whatever I want. And it felt very much like a live journal experience. You know, it's like people would just talk because they assumed that nobody was really listening, but it was still like a permanent thing. Like they'd be able to listen back to it. And that kind of authenticity. So like, that's the stuff that fascinates me. I talk a lot to myself when I'm walking and to my wife when she has to listen to me, or my friends when unfortunately they decide to like hang out with me outside of my house. But I talk a lot about like, what am I trying to do with these reels or whatever? And part of it is just like, I just want to figure out what the internet is now. It's different than what it used to be. It'll be different later on. But like the thing about the internet is it's got such an ability to give you inauthentic content and to flood you with AI videos or people trying to sell you stuff or people like really, but that every once in a while, it like cannot fully enclose against totally authentic expression. And that like, if you look really hard and you keep yourself open, you're going to find people that like will say something directly to you in a very like human one-to-one connection thing. And it's like, that's the thing that needs to be kept in my mind. Like that's the whole reason why we put up with all this internet stuff, is that like there is this kernel of life-changing information or human connection that actually is benefited off of this stuff. It's just hidden under a bunch of slop that might get harder every year, but like you can't lose sight on like there is something good here. I just don't know what it is. So now I'm trying to figure it out with like reels and doing podcasts, and it's been fun.
Yeah, it's interesting because you said this in a video that I watched today. When we were growing up, or when we were just slightly younger, you could kind of get to the end of the internet.
Yeah.
I guess, and I was thinking about that. I'm like, I don't know. It always felt infinite to me. I love to just be on my 17 tumblers I had. It always felt like I could be on there forever. But I know what you mean, because I would get to, I'd be caught up on my stuff, you know?
Exactly.
And And so it, then there was like a quantity less than what we have now, but now it's equally as hard to, or it's much hard. It's not the comparison I thought I was about to say, like, less back then, so it was harder to find, but now there's just so much that it's harder to find, but it's much harder now. It's a needle in a
Yeah.
haystack. But I think you articulate this really well, and it's interesting because I don't even remember how you found me or how we found each other, so you may not know this, but I started this very podcast in 2013.
Nice. Dang.
Yeah. And I used to joke, like, I don't know, 2016, when I was like trying to explain how long it had been. And I'd be like, this was a pre-serial podcast.
Yeah. Oh man.
I'd make some kind of self-deprecating joke like that, or I'd be like, I have a face for podcasting, and like all those
Well,
jokes
yeah.
don't even work anymore. Like, it's like I've been doing it so long that, but I'm in this phase right now where I'm trying to like I'm really trying to figure out the internet of like, oh man, I guess I do have to probably put my face out here, which I don't really want to do. And I like the medium of non-video podcasting, and I really like listening to things, and in the background, not multitasking, like I'm not paying attention, but walking or, to kind of taking it in that way. But yeah, the way you articulate that about trying to use the internet to work for you, I'm really trying to be inspired by that, because I think I've been in a different place where I'm like, man, I really got it to work for me. I got the 2013 internet to work for me because I was an early adopter. I was in the right place at the right time, and now it doesn't. If I do what I did then, it is not for this internet, and so I'm in the space of attempting to try to evolve and fumbling.
Yeah. I mean, so like, I think the way I would describe myself is like, I have an absolute fascination with the development of things, right? This idea that you can never step in the same river twice. I think somebody once said like, things that aren't changing are dying, right? And like, everything is going to change. I am even like, the take that I like to ruffle some feathers with is like, even when you listen to a recorded song the second time, it's different than the first time, because the first time, like, you hadn't heard it. Even if you listen to a song back to back, every single time, every single instance of a song is in itself like kind of a brand new song, every time it's played live, every time it's like recorded or something like that. But like, what fascinates me is like, everything in the world is rational. All the things that exist have a rationale to them. They all can be explained. And this development in the time, I feel like everyone's very, very good at looking back at things that happened like 20 years ago and being like, oh, this is why, this movie was popular and this thing was here or whatever. I want to be able to do that in real time. That's what I'm like trying to develop, is my ability to be like, this last week, I have been fascinated by the reaction to the new Super Mario Brothers movie. Have you like heard about this at all? I'll try to go quick, because this is one of those things that's definitely interesting to me, and I don't know if anyone else cares. But the movie is getting kind of critically panned by a lot of people, that it's like, there's nothing in this movie. It's nonstop action. It's just constantly throwing things at kids. And they're like, yeah, we know it's a kids movie, but kids movies, they should be like Miyazaki movies where there's like something for adults in them. And I'm like, I think what's happening is the reaction is, it's not a kids movie. It's a Gen Alpha kids movie. These are kids that grew up with screens. They're used to TikTok. They're used to seeing literally a brand new thing every 30 seconds, and they just swipe and they just swipe and they swipe. And like, that is now, I think, being reflected in a movie, which like, in my brain, I'm like, at some point those kids will be adults, and this format of this kind of non-stop movie, this movie that never breathes, somebody's gonna make an adult version of that when these kids are old enough to watch it. But it's like, this is the development of movies, the development of culture. It all ties into what you're talking about, this brand new internet, this attention economy internet. Like, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It just is. This is what it is now. This is what the Mario movie is. This is what reality is. We can either understand it, trying to make something of it, or just wag our fingers at it and be like, this is bad now. I liked my thing better. It's like, I don't know. Do I have the right to say that? Who cares?
Yeah. Oh man. No, you're so right. I mean, oh God, there's like 8 different tentacles.
I know, right? This is why we walk
with you. Yeah.
This is why we walk, so we can have something to focus on to keep all the thoughts like compiled.
Yeah. No, I got them, but I'm just like, I want to do all of them at once, but I just have to choose. I'll start with, 2 things. I heard you say before about how what you do, particularly with the videos, the short 1-minute videos, comparing that to what Twitter was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And what people want to consume now. And you articulated that really well. And I think you said like people like to see someone's face. They like to see someone moving and can probably sense that authenticity you were talking about earlier.
Well, yeah.
More. And my thought when I heard you say that, to be honest with you, was like, I'm kind of doing that thing you said of, looking at it as like, oh man, this is what I think because I had some success or I had some growth in that last phase of internet, I feel it's not even like a resentment. It just feels kind of daunting, and
Yes.
I had more ambition and energy back then. And yeah, it's learning a new skill too. And anyway, but I must, it's,
that is that's like a very real thing. It's why people shift careers and stuff like that.
Right.
Like one of the hard parts I've told, I like coach kids and stuff like that. And it's like one of the hard parts about being older is like I learned how to play the guitar, right? And so now I know how much time and effort and devotion that takes. And so like learning a new thing, I don't have the luxury of being like, this might be super easy. What if I'm like really good at it? I'll be like, even the worst thing that could happen is like, I really want this thing. And now I have to literally devote my entire life to that. And it's like, basically what you're saying is like, listen, I had success. I found a thing that I liked. And I think that, and nothing that I did or nothing that I wanted can change the fact that like just the rug has been kind of pulled out underneath me slowly over time. And I have to make the decision of like, do I just keep running after the rug or do I move on to something else? And it's like, I'm trying to think of the best example. Honestly, the best example I can give of this is how my brain works. Everything is just attaching weird little tidbits to each other. But the professional Super Smash Brothers Melee player Mango talks all the time about he started playing when he was like 15 years old. He's the youngest and oldest person to ever win a major and has just been playing this video game professionally for like 20 years. And he's very honest about like, hey, there are plenty of times where I just never want to play ever again. And I just like, I hate the game. I hate what happened to it. I hate all these little kids that are like, they have the motivation I used to have and I have to literally go beat them. Like I literally have to go compete with them. And sometimes I don't want to do it at all. And his whole thing has just been very honest about like, he just keeps trying because at some point, like it will end. And when it ends, but like, it's not going to be him that ends it. Let reality fully pull the rug out. Like just try as much as you can and recognize that like, sometimes you're not going to want to actually keep up with it, and that's fine. It's just going to keep going. But like that mentality of like, he just keeps playing and he just keeps going not because he thinks he's going to get back the old thing, but he's just like, at some point it will end. So I might as well just keep going as long as I can. And it's like that. I love that mentality. I don't know. It keeps me going.
Wow. I really, you're going to have to email me his name or like what this interview or something. Cause he's my hero. Like, I think I need it. I've never heard of him and that would never have been an example I'm not a video game guy, so it wouldn't have come in my field, but that is, or my monoculture, cause the algorithm is just like our individual monoculture, I guess, and now it will, but I've been looking for some examples, of and by success, I mean, I was no, superstar, but I had some, traction, I guess, like probably, in a similar sense of what you're experiencing now, when you can tell that something's working with what's going on and you kind of feel like you can dial it up or dial it down. And it's just, you have to evolve or you're dead, and that, anyway, that person is a good example. Cause I'm also like, I do still want to keep doing it, but yeah. I'm figuring out the next way to keep doing it and not to just like do it if I try to put the way I was doing it into the 2026 formula, that wouldn't even work.
Novelty's overrated, honestly. Like, it's just find something that works for you really, I think the biggest thing is like, are you going to be able to just keep doing it?
Yeah,
it's like, even if you have a really novel concept, if you do it twice and stop, you're done anyway. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And like, I've just started getting into this world of content creation stuff. Before this, I was like trying to play music and I got involved in the local Portland, Oregon indie music scene. I was trying to do music and write. I thought maybe I'd write like a really good album. I made a bunch of albums and stuff like that I really enjoy. They got no public like cultural significance. You know, no one really. I got more listeners since I started doing these reels than they got in the 10 years that those albums have like been out. But like, you know, I got all this other stuff out of playing in a music scene. The house that I'm living in now is filled with all these guitars. Most of these are my wife's guitars. Like I met her, she was playing at a house show. Our wedding was at our friend's backyard. He does house shows all the time, and our friends with a wedding band playing a bunch of covers of songs that I told him any song off the Shrek soundtrack, which is a phenomenal wedding playlist, by the way. Shrek knows love. But, you know, like I got all this stuff that I didn't think I was going to get, and then now all of a sudden, as I'm like coming out of really like my love of playing all these indie rock shows, I'm getting older. It's harder for me to even stay up past like 11. You know, it's harder for me to go to shows on my nights off. It's harder for me to like view a band as really new. I've seen so many bands really, but now I have this like new life that's come to it of like, well, some people want to hear my opinion on some stuff. So now I found myself finding way more music than I have in the last couple of years just because people want to listen to me talk about, I don't know, Mango or whatever, and Super Smash Brothers, and walk around and show some songs that I thought were kind of neat. It's all sort of evolved. I couldn't tell you how I got here. It only makes sense after I got here. You know, I worked in a psych hospital for kids and adolescents when I got out of college. And at one point I was a semi-professional wiffle ball player. My life is a weird story.
Yeah.
But it all makes sense now. So it's like that. I don't know what to make of that. You know, the fact that it makes sense now is probably the least sensible part of it, you know?
I'm sure you've heard that Steve Jobs quote, right? That's like, you can't connect the dots moving forward, only going back.
Yep.
You know, I guess with us being the same age, I think our generation, if you will, like we're kind of at a point of, and maybe every generation has this, but what we grew up thinking we could be when we grow up, or how it would look, or you know, jobs we could even have, or that, you know, don't exist anymore.
Jesus.
Like so we're really having to like, you know, and I'm sure that happens with every generation, but this is like one of the other like, you know, tributaries I was going to go down when you were talking about the last thing you were saying about the movie, and you were talking about the
Super Mario Brothers movie.
Yeah. The Gen Alpha, like, I feel like this gap between generations, obviously it's because of the internet, you know, it feels so vast and it feels like such a big deal. And I mean, I guess that the divide between myself and a boomer is vast, but I guess it just, I don't know. Do you think that is a comparable divide to what I'll feel when I'm a boomer's age to Gen Alpha?
So I obviously I think about the generations all the time because like one, they're categorizations that aren't real, but they are very definitively real. And like what you're talking about, like I think of it as like, you know, we moved out of the advertising cohort, but it's also we lost control over what is cool on the internet for the first time. You know, the millennials were the first generation where it was normal to be online. Gen X, it was like just a very small subset, but millennials. So we kind of invented the idea of like normal cool on the internet, and it's very cringe now to look back at like, you know, the penguin memes or whatever, but like that was us establishing that like this is our space and we own it. And now there's another group that's using the internet to, you know, there's a reason I watched the entirety of Skibbity Toilet. I wanted to see what these kids are going to be watching, like what is important to them, you know. Now it's going to be a Michael Bay movie or something like that. But like ultimately, like the one thing I always kind of in terms of like when people worry about like, oh, am I going to be like a boomer? I got to act like they are. It's like their life is so materially different than our generation, even Gen X and millennial and Zoomers. They were the protagonists of reality the entire time, right? When they were teenagers, the Beatles were like the biggest band of all time. And then as they got older and all this stuff, they just kept talking about Woodstock, you know? I remember I had a class in elementary school that talked about the Beatles and Woodstock, and it's like they have always been the protagonists of reality. It has created, and I don't want to talk negatively about any individual person, but like as a cohort, the boomers are a more narcissistic generation than any of the ones that have come after it, because it's the tragedies of the system's failures for the millennials, for Gen X, for the Zoomers and Gen Alpha. Like the system is meeting its own contradictions and it's failing us, but that leaves a room for a type of empathy, right? Everybody that is a millennial is aware of how boomers reacted to new culture by saying, no, I don't care. And they didn't have to care because culture kept the focus on them, right? The whole time. You know, Curb Your Enthusiasm was still one of the top comedies, and that dude's a boomer, right? It's like, that's like the mentality there. These people got to be the center of attention the whole time. Every other generation, though, is much more aware of like the role they're going to have to play and the coexistence they're going to have with the younger generations. And it's like Gen Alpha right now, they get to be kind of narcissistic because they're the youngest ones, and there's no other cohort that's coming up after them. But there will be, and then they'll have the same reaction that we had, maybe even more. My theory is that like the empathy of these generations is evolving in a progressively more positive way just because the materials change, The boomers, they had houses that, turned into retirement accounts. Gen X got .com stocks. Some people or millennials got Bitcoin, and then there's nothing else after that. So the thing that like you could get rich off got progressively stupider over time. And it's like nobody actually believes Bitcoin's ever going to be used for any good outside of like a couple of absolute sociopaths. But you could get rich off of it. But the fact that that's so stupid makes us less inclined to be like, well, let's go find the next speculative asset bubble. Whereas the boomers, they're like, yeah, you just buy a home and you pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Right.
And it's like, hey, who cares?
Yeah, I mean, maybe there'll be another thing we don't know about. Like, what's the thing after Bitcoin? Or maybe there'll be something a few generations. I mean, I think about that, like when you were saying the thing about Twitter, about the videos being the new Twitter. Where my head went was like, maybe I just wait for the next Twitter. Like, remember Periscope? Like that,
Yeah.
Maybe I just wait for and I thought that about TikTok, and I still am thinking a lot about TikTok, but I was like, I did the other ones. I'm going to sit this one out, and I think it'll blow over. And then, who knows what'll be next, but
seriously, we don't really know. I think the ultimate thing though, is that like the stuff that survives, that changes the form. So it's like you go from like television, right, to the written internet. Millennials are like, we grew up with the written internet. I think that's something that is going to get more articulated as time goes on, because we're now in the purely visual internet. And because of that, because most of the world is online, we've basically created a generation of technically illiterate people, right? That they can't read into that context. And, I keep hearing all these boomers and millennials talk about how awful it is that these kids are illiterate. And my thought process is like, one, most of human history, most people were illiterate. But two, their Twitter being TikTok means they've picked up a certain set of skills that's going to be native to them that's not native to us. And that's where I get into this authenticity thing, where it's like, I think because they've seen so many videos, they can kind of know like, oh, this person's authentically saying something to me. This is who they are, and this is a thought that they really have. My guess is what you do on your podcast, from what I've listened to, is like you have an authentic you that you've found a way to share. And it's like that could be translated to TikTok. You could wait for the next thing, but like it's the nice part about it is that it's like, even though the form changes, the actual content is the same. It's the authentic you that is being expressed that actually connects with these people. So it's like, for me right now, finding that in TikTok, finding out that this is something that I'm good at as well, really, really positive. It's like, I can't, that's great for me, but it's not for everybody. Some people hate it because they aren't getting the same response. And like, I can't tell them to go do this thing that I like because they don't like it.
Yeah.
But it works for me. So.
Well, I'm so glad, and I can see why. I mean, you're very good at it. The authenticity thing, certainly for you. And it seems like, and perhaps this is related or necessary for authenticity, but it seems like you genuinely enjoy it. And that's kind of what I was thinking earlier too, when we were talking about format and evolving, is like, it's whatever is going to be sustainable for you, whatever you want to continue to do. That's why I've been able to continue this for as long as I have, is because it was sustainable for me in a very like low ask to other people, especially. Yeah. And even back then, like you were saying, those early days, like I would tell people like, oh, you want to come on my podcast? And they'd be like, oh my God, you're on iTunes? like, cause they didn't know there wasn't a gatekeeper, and like it looked cool,
Oh, that's
And
a great millennial sentence right there. You're on
right?
iTunes. I'm like, yeah, I am. I want to
Yeah.
be exclusively on iTunes now. That sounds great.
Yeah, only been early a very few times in my life, and that was one of them. And but anyway, it's whatever is fun for you. You're going to be able to have the energy to continue, and I'm so glad that it feels that way. And it genuinely that comes across. But I'm curious, like as you have grown, like have you noticed any of that nasty part of it of like of like checking too much, or have you had to like create any boundaries, or are you like pretty chill about that stuff?
No, I literally gave myself carpal tunnel. I was checking my notifications so
Oh
often,
no.
and I have a long and torn history of arguing with people online. So the nice thing about that is, having argued with a bunch of people online, I pretty much, as soon as somebody tries to push a button of mine, I like kind of know how to deal with that. My favorite one that I've been doing recently is like somebody will come in and be like, "You look dumb. Everything you said is wrong. You're an idiot." And I will just respond with, "Hey man, my wife reads these comments. Please don't do that." And they'll go, "My bad. Sorry."
Wow, I
Or
love that gets them. I'm so
it's
glad they
just,
don't like say something meaner.
when they do, the one that I always get is like, sometimes they do, and then somebody, one of my like on my side, will like start yelling at that guy, and I was like, "Don't defend me. You don't need to. Trust me. Like, I worked in a psych hospital for kids and adolescents. Sometimes you just go and walk over to a kid, and they just spit in your face first thing they did, and I'd be like, listen, you're either gonna be mad at me right here, or we're gonna go play Mario Kart in the next room, and I'll tell you this right now. If you spit on my face again here, they're going to lock you up and they're going to be mad at you because that's inappropriate behavior. But if I'm kicking your ass at Mario Kart, like if I'm absolutely demolishing you, and I promise you right now, I will demolish you at Mario Kart, everyone will think that your anger is because I'm being a dick. And don't you want that? Like, don't you want to be able to get mad at me and take out all your anger at me? And it looks healthy, and like everyone will let you do that. You know, it's like sometimes being mad online is fun. Some people are having bad days and they want to be mad online, and they pick me, and I just look at it as like, well, hopefully things get better for you, man. If you need to be mad at me, like, I can take that. I know I can. My life is pretty good. Things have worked out for me. I can handle this thing. There's like a Louis C.K. joke where he's helping kids with the milk cartons, the little like envelope milk cartons. He's like, "I'm not better at opening the milk carton. I'm better at dealing with the frustration of how hard this is, because kids are bad at it and I'm good at it. And
Yeah.
that's what makes me an adult." So that's how I kind of look at it. It's like, there's probably some kid who's just mad. It's like, dude, school sucks, man. Get mad at the guy online who seems kind of like a goofy weirdo, you know? Come on.
God, that's so good. I hadn't heard that before, but that's so true. Being an adult really is like just being better at dealing with the frustration. That's so true.
Yeah. You know, you're supposed to evolve these things. It's all muscles that you got to be able to practice. And it's like, but also all of that too is like, sometimes being an adult is being like, dude, fuck this milk carton, man. I can't get this thing open. And
Right,
just
right.
having a bad day. It's like, it's going to happen. It might not be okay that it happens. It might be fine that it happens or whatever, but it is going to happen. Like, people are going to have bad days. And it's like, I don't know. It's usually not about me. It couldn't be about me. They've watched me talk for 60 seconds.
Right, of course. Well, it sounds like you have a great temperament for handling this stuff that is necessary to continue. Do you remember, like, you know, obviously you said a little bit about your background and you know, and playing music, but do you remember when you decided you were going to go out and talk on the was it just one walk where you picked up your phone for the first one, or did you plan that you were going to do that?
So it's actually, it's going to sound even, like I said, everything in my life only makes sense in hindsight. But what started this off is that for the last like 2 years, me and a friend, and now I got a whole team behind me, have been building out a fantasy football app that was literally just me trying to make the game of fantasy football more fun. We base it off of Mario Kart, where it's like, the better you're doing, the harder the game is, the worse you're doing, the easier it is. So everybody in the league stays in it for like the whole game, and we just made trading a lot easier, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play that, and I was playing it on a spreadsheet, and now we've figured out a way to like develop the app. But in doing this, we're like, all right, well, we should see if we can, you know, drum up some interest for this thing. I'll try to make some TikToks and see if I can get anybody to like watch this. And I did a round of them, and one of them got like 30,000 views. And I was like, that blew me away. I just remember the whole day checking my phone constantly. And then I stopped doing it for a while because we had to figure out a bunch of like business stuff. And I was like, all right, I remember it being a Friday and being like, I told myself this week I was going to make more TikToks. I told myself I would start. I'm just going to pull the phone out while I was already on a walk. And I'm going to just talk about like, why does nobody trade in fantasy football? And that video got 380,000 views. And from that moment on, that was about 6 months ago. For about 2 or 3 months during the football season, I just made sports ones. And that's where I figured out, they like when I walk around. They like seeing the trees in the background. And the big revelation was this idea that is like, if I come in with something pre-planned, it doesn't have that authenticity. So I literally don't think of anything until I'm on the walk. And then when something hits me, I immediately start recording it because I'm trying to capture that eureka moment. They seem to respond to that. And after having some success on that for 2 or 3 months or something like that, I had a different TikTok account, started talking about a bunch of different stuff, and settled on this kind of, I can put a song up, kind of talk about the song, kind of talk about whatever else is going on, talk about my life in like an indie music scene. And then I eventually started putting those videos on Instagram because I didn't want my actual friends to know about these things at first. Started putting it on Instagram, and it blew up on Instagram. I went from 300 followers to 10,000 followers in about 3 months. And it's just been like a wild journey that all started with, by the way, I'll plug, if anybody wants to play the fantasy football app, it's called Clubhouse Fantasy Sports, clubhousefantasysports.io. Please sign up. That's my plug. But that's it's all just kind of developed from there. And I found that I was kind of good at it, and I found what I liked about it. But like that's gonna change probably. So for now, it's kind of cruising, but we'll see what it turns into.
Yeah, it's so cool. No, I'm so glad that all of that happened for you, and that it's been, such a positive experience. You can, like I said, you can tell. Zadie Smith said in an interview I heard that someone was talking to her about this or about aging, I think, and I loved what she said because she was just sort of like, look, I really liked being young. I did. I really liked it, but also I am writing, and she speaks to her peers, and that's what she does, and she's like, that's the only experience that she can speak to, or that she probably didn't say that 'cause she writes like historical fiction too, but but yeah, I guess she writes the historical fiction for her peers, though. I guess she's not catering to a younger generation, which I completely wouldn't even try to conceptualize how to appeal to. But I know your audience is more vast. Do you think about that in the same way of you're talking to peers generationally, or how do you look at that?
So the big thing that I watch metric wise is, right, my largest cohort is people that are roughly my age. I think it's like the 25 to 35 thing. I look at all the numbers. I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to try to sit here and pretend like I am above checking my numbers, checking all the demographics and stuff like that. I'm fascinated by trying to figure out how this thing works. And it's always this fight between the next cohort, the 36 to 45-year-old versus the 17 to 25. That number goes up and down depending on the music that I'm talking about. Me personally, I would rather be showing new music to teenagers. I want them to find something because I just remember when I was, 17 years old, when I was 20 years old and I listened to the Mountain Goats for the first time, it changed my fucking life. I don't know if that's going to happen with another band. I really don't. I don't think there's going to be another, because there's no room in my heart for All Hail West Texas. All Hail West Texas is my heart. So there's this part of me that's the older generation tends to like when I talk about a song that they also like. That I'll mention something and they'll give me oh, I remember doing this and I remember talking about that. The number one thing that they tend to write in my videos is this reminds me of when I was in high school walking around talking with my friends about stuff. Whereas the kids, the younger group, tend to be more of oh, that's cool. I hadn't heard this before. Check out this new young band or something like that. They send me a lot of Zoomer music, and a lot of it, I'll tell you, I feel the generation gap on it. I'm I don't understand this shit at all. It's kind of interesting. I don't necessarily, not my cup of tea or whatever. But it's I think that I try to drive myself more towards showing younger people new music. And I'm totally thankful for all the older people. I am the older person. I'm 36. I'm actually in that 35 to 45 age range there. But it's I just kind of view it very similar to Kurt Cobain. You play the music for the kids, man. And it's great that I'm older and all that. And I appreciate where I'm at with age and all that. I don't know if I even answered the question here, but when you're talking about writing for your cohort. And just, I think the reason that I'm able to talk to younger people is because I'm not trying to be younger. I'm not trying to be like, hey, look at me, I'm 17 just like you. It's like, no, I'm very aggressively 36. I'm whatever. Go listen to some music that I thought was cool, or don't. Like, it's cool if you tell me to fuck off, man. I'm like some weird old guy talking to you on a computer,
Right. I mean, I think because the topic of music is so, it can bring people together in all sorts of ways, but I think that's really interesting. I mean, when I was growing up, like the way I discovered music was from, well, you have a video about this too, from Zach Braff, like soundtracks.
Oh my god, yeah.
Or
shout out
like,
to Zach Braff, my what my wife likes to call my best friend, Zach Braff.
Right, so. Right, mine too. Yeah, influenced our entire generation, but also like the older kid who made me the CD, or like that was influenced by like their older brother, or cousin, or dad, or who had cool taste in music or whatever it was. And now I find things that I missed that were around, or that I was a little too young for. And and I think this is another thing that you said somewhere that we share, but I'm definitely, a big rabbit hole guy of like, I like one thing and then I do a deep dive and it's like months later and I'm have like a doctoral degree in it. But I was talking to someone recently and I thought this was such a bummer for him because we had a lot of the same taste in music. He's a bit older than me. And so I was kind of thinking like, oh, he's going to know more about these 90s bands that I have like come to love than me, because they were, more of, and we have a lot of overlap in the Venn diagram, but he had like a couple big blind spots, and just one of them was
spots, maybe.
Yeah, one of them was Pavement, and I was like, oh, and I like made him a playlist, and I was like, oh, I like picked out some songs that like of him that I think you'll like, and he really didn't like it. And and the reason why was just simply because he was like, I just can't get into things that were around when I was young that I missed. And I was like, man, that's such a bummer for you, because it's been such a joy for me to be like, oh my God, I just discovered this new band, Pavement or whatever it is, like, and then getting so into something that I just missed when I was younger, and it feels like it's just releasing now and you have like a vast discography to tap into. So I don't know, have you experienced that with people who feel the same way?
100%. Yeah. First off, like, I love the deep rabbit hole, and like my biggest thing that I want to get across when I like talk about music is like, I'm not reviewing anything. I never review any of this music. I just talk about stuff because it's like the way that I liked music was so in opposition to like what Pitchfork does, or like what the Needle Drop does, where they're like, and this is a 7 out of 10 guitar part or something like that. I've never listened to a fucking Lou Barlow song and thought of a number, It's a Mad Men quote. Whoever looked up at the stars and thought of a number. Love it. But it's like with that guy that he's talking about there, where he's like, I won't listen to something that came out and was big when I was, when I was younger or something like that. I think a lot of my like young adulthood was coming up with rules like that for myself of like, I'm not going to like this, I'm not going to like that. And then watching as all of those rules would immediately fall apart when one thing broke through, it's like, oh, I'm not going to like a type of band that does X until this one band did it. And now all of a sudden, the rules completely out the window. And so it's like, I think that's the part that I really enjoy about this process and about being part of a music scene and being surrounded by so many people that have so many different tastes in music. The joke that I tell my friends all the time is it's wild that I'm the music influencer because I know the least about music out of all of these people I hang out with. But just trying to make sure that I don't calcify. The big thing I worry about, I don't mind being older. I don't even mind the fact that my back hurts and my knees kind of hurt and stuff like that. Like, I don't mind going to bed early because it's whatever. That's fine. I would mind if I got to the point where I calcified so much that I wasn't open to new, beautiful, true things or something like that. That's the thing that I feel like young people don't have to do that because it's all new. But like as you get older, you do have to fight against like, I'm thinking like, I didn't like reggae when I was 22. Maybe 22-year-old me was wrong. Let's give it another shot. and trying to listen to it like a new person that doesn't have all this other baggage. It's impossible to do, but like you got to try, because the second you stop trying, it all calcifies real fast. And that's what I'm really trying to avoid.
Yeah, yeah. And I think your work really helps people to do that. And it's so true. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier about learning. And like we don't have the delusion of youth, or we have a bigger sample size of things sometimes working out, but often not. And when I was younger, I had this ability to just go for things because, I delusion, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm sure you've read that there was like an article a while back, or a study maybe, about how the music you listen to when you're a teen or or from a specific, like, I can't remember what it was, of like 18 to something, like, will always be
Yeah.
your favorite. It's kind of just making the case for not calcifying. And you have to, if you want to evolve, you have to learn new skills and kind of force yourself to do it, knowing how hard it is. And same with, discovering music. It's so easy to just stay in these patterns. And I just think that's it's such a bummer. And like you said, it's the scariest thing about aging, is to be, we have to actively not be that way.
And that's the thing though, but it's like the fight against being that way, the fight against that calcification. Like my biggest thought as like somebody that is now a micro influencer, I guess is the technical term on this stuff, is like, I just remember how much growing up when you would listen to like talk about newer bands or something like that, just how much that had to compete with these bands from the 60s. The boomers never really tried to crack open that calcification. They were like, no, this has to be better than Bob Dylan. And it's like, dude, Bob Dylan couldn't even compete with Bob Dylan, because Bob Dylan that writes the first Bob Dylan album, you'd be like, well, this Bob Dylan's written all these albums. This is just one album. And it's like, hey, yeah, no one could compete with that. You could never be that thing. But it's like that fight against the calcification being a new problem to solve. That's kind of fun. Like, that's the point of being young, is like, you want new problems to solve. You don't, hell would just be doing the same problems over and over and over and over again. Like, life is not just suffering against the tide of the same fucking afflictions over and over again. What's beautiful about it is you just keep walking down the path, and now you got like a new problem to solve. Like, you're never going to run out of problems, but it's just like the fact that it's new. It's a different version of the old problem with music. Is like, I didn't know what my taste was. Now my problem is I do know what my taste is. I don't want that to be all of music though.
Yeah, completely. And this is sort of putting a penny in your jukebox of something that I heard you say that I like, but I think it's kind of in the vicinity of what we've been talking about with the generations. But, I'd be remiss to not have it included in this, of what you're saying about how Zoomers have attached to Gen X music more than Gen X did. And you talk about this in the Wednesday cover of the Smashing Pumpkins song, but I think does that also, maybe you can talk about that, but do you also mean they've attached it more than us too?
Yeah, I think like in my brain, it's like the grandfather effect, where it's like you kind of relate better to your grandparents than you do to your parents. Like that, like your parents are a reaction to your grandparents, you're a reaction to your parents, but like your reaction to the parents kind of brings you back in line with the grandparents to some extent. This is not true of everybody, but it's just one of the ways that I think about this. But specifically with like Gen X music, this was music written in the 1990s. This is the end of history, right? This is the end of the Cold War. America won. We had the dot-com boom. Like, things were looking pretty bright for America. It was the start of this kind of like stasis, whatever, but we didn't know that at the time. We thought this is kind of it. This is as good as it's going to get. But it's this music about being sad and being depressed and being lost and like angry at nothing and ennui or whatever. It's like, which actually ties more into what the Zoomers are going through, right? Like, the millennials had tech optimism. We thought at the very least we might be able to get a job at Facebook if everything works out. The Zoomers are like, maybe I can get a DoorDash gig or something like that. Like, and so the thing that was almost purely aesthetic in the 90s, which was the grunge movement, which was just sort of like a style for most of the people that were into it. Most of the people were not Kurt Cobain living in the middle of nowhere in Washington. They were just some preppy kid that thought it looked cool. But like, that aesthetic is more in line with the reality of the Zoomers, and I think that's what they attach it. I think that's why you're seeing. It's why, like, I just think that a lot of their stuff, what they do with rock and roll and like rock bands and stuff like that, why Geese is so fucking good is that, like, it's a mix of like a more authentic relationship to that type of message, which just makes for better rock music. It's better to rock against something than to rock for something, you know? It should be an opposition. But also, it's like a big thing with the Zoomers is like they don't care about genres at all. They've never had genres be distinguishing. They've just had Spotify. They just listen to whatever the fuck happens. And so, like, they'll take the content of grunge music and then warp it through lo-fi hip-hop beats and come up with something that sounds just fucking wild to me. And it actually, like, ties into the aesthetic and the content of it better than anything my generation could do, because we still are like, well, it's got to look like Nirvana. It's like they don't care about that. They don't care about genres or anything like that. They just care about the content. So it's more Gen X culture is almost more authentic for the Zoomers than it was for Gen X, where it's more aesthetic.
Yeah, completely. And what about millennials and that? Like, something I found myself saying quite often was like, "Oh man, like I identify as Gen X, like because we are not people's favorite, and I'm always like, they had the best clothes, they had the best music, and we were also close, and they were close enough to us that they weren't our parents, but they were our like cooler older siblings or our like cooler cousins.
The cool cousins.
Yeah, exactly. So, that we idolized them. And I think that was what was, when I woke up that day and realized I wasn't the youngest generation, I was like, oh, I love the generation older than me. I literally idolize them and think they're so cool and want to join. And the one behind me doesn't think that about me at all,
No. I mean, maybe the Gen Alpha, honestly though, like kind of Gen Alpha is doing that. I did watch all of Skibbity Toilet. I think it is genuinely good, but it is made by a millennial that's doing machinima stuff, which is just like when you use video game assets to make a movie or something like that. Really, the thing I think about with the millennials, like what we will be known for is like, we are a type of optimistic that came out in our culture that was not naive. It was like intentional optimism. We were coming as a response to the grunge era, which was sort of aesthetically very negative, very kind of like, Kurt Cobain's the hero of Gen X or whatever. And we were like, well, that didn't really solve anything. You guys just seemed kind of fucking miserable, and you didn't even enjoy the good stuff that you got. It's like Elon Musk is Gen X, and he doesn't seem happy. He seems like he's fucking miserable. So we're going to get less than them. Millennials are defined by the economic crash of 2008. That was the economy we all emerged into. And we were aware immediately. It's like, all right, we're probably going to get less than Gen X did. We're definitely getting less than what the boomers got. Maybe the problem is, though, that we just need to learn to appreciate the things that are here. It's like in the middle of the 2008 economic crisis, millennials are voting for Obama's Hope and Change and listening to LCD Sound System play like disco music, essentially. And it's like, that wasn't, wholly authentic. It was a choice. And it's sort of a wrong choice because it's sort of a purely idealistic thing. And I think that's where the millennial cringe is like now what our definition is. And it comes from the fact that it was such an idealistic way to live. It's just, we're just going to change the way everyone talks about stuff. We're going to change the way everyone reacts to things. And that's going to change the reality of them. It's not how it works. There's a material reality underneath it all that the Zoomers and now Gen Alpha are going to have to live in. But, I think right now millennials are really cringe. But I do see this connection with Gen Alpha. I think Skibbity Toilet, I genuinely think, is like a connection of like something from the millennial culture. This optimistic reaction to the technology at the time by like making fucking machinima. We're going to take Halo and make a web series out of it because it's fun. That's something that is like now shaping Gen Alpha culture, And so I think they'll have a more positive relation to us than the Zoomers are. The Zoomers are going to think we're the least cool people that have ever lived forever, full stop. They might be right about it, but like, just wait until they're 35. Oh, it's going to be awful.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the thing about age. It comes for all of us. And the thing when you're young, you really don't realize that. I didn't. I certainly didn't.
Why would you? It'd be a horrible way to live as a young person, Right. It's like, would you really want an 8-year-old to like understand taxes? It'd be awful.
I don't understand it now, to be honest.
Exactly. I think that's what we're supposed to understand. I was
Yeah.
reading a thing the other day
The
that it's
geese
like,
song?
we don't even pay taxes. Taxes are just what the money they take out of the economy so inflation doesn't get that bad. All the government stuff is just paid for by printing more money, and then we just remove money from the economy, and that's what taxes are. So,
Wow.
uh, I know, right?
I just learned taxes. I still thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, I don't know what to do with that information. That's the other thing with the millennials is like we had all this information. We probably had a much more free and open internet. And I think that's honestly what Gen Alpha is going to attach itself to is like the freedom of MySpace is going to end up getting idealized, you know?
Mm,
That like you had control over your web presence and that you could like have a social media app that your parents couldn't see. Facebook was
right.
cool because my parents couldn't get
Right,
on
right,
it, you know?
right.
That was cool. Whatever. Fuck. We did some cool things.
Yeah.
Fuck you, Gen Z.
Well, man, okay, I could talk to you forever, but I have like copious notes and a bunch of other questions, so I'll do these sort of as rapid fire.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
I'm sorry. I'm a rambler, man.
no, no, I
That's
mean
why-
same. It's same. Let's talk about music stuff a little bit. So other
Yeah.
than Zach Braff, our buddy, what else like influenced your music taste growing up and to now?
Number one, first and foremost, got to shout out my mom, Kate. She would play the Beatles and Bob Dylan all the time growing up. And like that's part of my reaction of like, oh, you know, Bob Dylan versus Bob Dylan. That whole rant comes from this. But ultimately, I think starting your music education with the Beatles is phenomenal because it really is like the 101 for everything that came after it. I made, I made a reel recently that talked about like the Beatles were really the last time, not the Beatles, but like the first time where like a new genre of music came out that made everything else that was out there immediately feel old and out of date, you know? When the Beatles released like Please Please Me or something like that, now all of a sudden everything else feels like Bing Crosby and none of it is relevant to anybody anymore. You can't do that anymore because there's just too many genres of music. You can have something new, but it's not going to make everything else feel old. But Beatles and Bob Dylan from my mom, she really got me into that. She was the one that really loved music. And then my brother was the one that got me into the Smashing Pumpkins because he just, if you want to talk about somebody that will pick something he loves and absolutely obsess over it, it is my brother. And like he found the Smashing Pumpkins in high school. I was like, this is the greatest band. And at first I was like, this is terrible. His voice is awful. Eventually it kind of like sunk in that it was just this, I don't know, it hit me at one point. And then I got really into grunge. And then I want to shout out my buddy from way back, one of my oldest friends. His name is Joe Ball, and I remember sitting in his room in high school, like sophomore year, junior year of high school or something like that, and he's showing me like Radiohead and stuff like that, and showed me Dinosaur Jr. And when I latched onto Dinosaur Jr., and then I put that into Pandora, and for like 3 years, that's how I found music, was Dinosaur Jr. Pandora Radio, and that still is like the most influential thing that ever happened, because that was the moment where I started feeling like I'm finding my music. I'm not just appreciating music or like being a Smashing Pumpkins fan. When I found Dinosaur Jr.'s You're Living All Over Me, I'm like, that's my thing. I wish I could make that. That's my whole hope then. And that like motivated me to learn how to play all the instruments and stuff like that. It's all downstream from there.
Oh, that's so cool. When you say Pandora, like totally forgot that, you know, before that I was finding things based on someone making me a mix CD and then having to like type in the lyrics and title them all in my iPod and pretend like I like knew that because it was embarrassing to not know for some reason. and then to, you know, by the time I think just after college, then you could just find something that you loved on one of those CDs or, you know, and then find more like that, you know, which is like, I guess the algorithm is more like that, please. But it was really so wonderful at that time. And, you know, now it's kind of the problem we talked about at the beginning of the, you know, abundance, but
Well, I think
yeah.
the biggest problem with the algorithm now is that like the Pandora algorithm sucked. So most of the stuff it gave me, I didn't like. And then it would give me something I like. And when I got something I liked, I held onto it. I cherished it. I would go find the album it came from because it was hard to find things that you like. Nowadays, it feels like the algorithm is so good that like you push on it and it gives you stuff that's all basically the same. It all fits into your algorithmic like. And so for something to stick out of that crowd, much, much harder. You have to like I actually don't know how you compete against it. Most of the music I get now is just from my friends, but like a crappier algorithm actually creates the opportunity for you to have memorable interactions with music.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I remember when Discover Weekly first came out on Spotify, and whenever that was, maybe probably like 10 years ago or more, which is so crazy because it
I
feels
know.
like
I
recent.
know.
But I remember like, kind of a joke I used to make then was like, the algorithm knows me better than anybody. It's crazy. Like, and it was like novel to say back then. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's nuts. It was like I remember being so excited to go walk around and listen to my Discover Weekly each week, and it was like, oh my god, it's like someone I had a crush on in high school made me a CD every week.
Yeah. And now like it's like that for everything. That was so personal and special for music and stuff like that. But now it's like when you go and see the ads that come up on Instagram, it's like the
Yeah,
same thing. It's all tailored
I
to
know.
me, which I'm a middle child. I'm a difficult person. As soon as I feel like somebody's doing something to cater to my likes and interests, I'm like, I don't like any of that stuff anymore. I like everything that's the opposite of that, which I think is,
Yeah,
that's me. I like that. Be a little difficult, be a little contrarian.
completely. It really does lose its luster. Like there was, when you open your phone and there's just the reels that are there that you don't follow or whatever, which to be honest is like maybe how I found you and maybe how a lot of people
Yeah.
find you. So, we can't be mad at it, but there was something there that was just so incredibly spot on to something I mean, this is not interesting at all because, we've all experienced this, but it was so true and so spot on. And I so wanted to send it to so many people. And then I was just like, this is it's uninteresting because it's so,
Yeah.
I guess I'm just reiterating what you're describing,
Well,
but
it makes you feel dirty, It's like that's the thing that you have
yeah,
to kind of deal with. It's like, dude, I don't want to be a fucking algorithm, man. I want to be a real thing. I want to be, unique or whatever.
right. Which I
Uh,
think like a way that I contradict that or try to, I guess, is the wormholes and rabbit holes that I go down in a specific area. And I know, we were kind of alluding to that a second ago that, that you do that too, but that's something I want to ask you. What is something recently that you are tearing apart and deconstructing, and has anything caught your attention?
oh man, there's almost always something that does that. Unfortunately, for everybody in my life right now, I'm back on a David Foster Wallace kick.
Your
And
doppelganger?
yeah, exactly. I think that he would find it very enjoyable that a guy on this Reels app that he never got to experience looks like he modeled his view off of the movie based off of his life. Like no one compares me to David Foster Wallace. They compare me to Jason Segel playing David Foster Wallace, which I think he might get a kick out of. But it's kind of the same thing. Like I used to be so obsessive about stuff. I would just read the same things over and over again. I do think that like if you really like a band, go listen to their first album and work your way up to everything they've ever done because it's all one body of work, right? It all can be understood as like one corpus. And for years, I like tried to fight against that in my mid 20s. And I read a bunch of like short stories and stuff like that. So I'd get a bunch of different authors and I wouldn't just hyper fixate on one guy. But then I found David Foster Wallace and I was like, dude, I know he gets a bad reputation. I've heard all the criticisms about him from every single different thing. And I've mostly apologized for even liking him. But man, oh fucking man, he is a phenomenal writer and he was prescient. He
Yeah,
was
that's
watching
what's
TV.
scary. Yeah.
Yeah. He watched TV before the internet and concluded that in a very near period of time, one, we're going to vote for a president that's not attached to any political party really strongly, just purely out of apathy. And then number two, that everyone's going to be addicted to entertainment stuff
Yeah.
and that they're going to have to figure out their relationship to a type of entertainment and a type of passive lifestyle that's going to rob you of your actual life. His conclusion is that you have to sincerely get yourself addicted to something positive. That's like his sort of conclusion from the problem that he was able to sniff out very early on was like sincerity is the way through all of this noise, And the fact that he was able to see that so clearly and really, man, his big thing is he never wanted to be a guy who just wrote for other writers. There's so many writers that like they just want to make their MFA like classmates jealous, and it's like no, he was adamant that he wanted a guy who like barely passed high school to be able to read the things that he was writing. He wanted to have a type of transformative literature that reaches normal everyday people that aren't considered readers. And I think of that every time I make these reels. Like, I could get really esoteric. I'm not really trying to be as thought ahead heavy as I am. I want to say something that, like, if you sat down next to me at a bar and like we were having a drink, I could say something that just sticks with you for a couple hours for the rest of your day. Like, that's my goal. I want to be able to communicate to normal fucking people, even though I'm fully aware that I'm pretty fucking crazy most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think the quote, like the specific quote you're talking about, I think it's even in that movie. Every so often, it probably will happen now. It comes into my algorithm, like somebody reading it, and every time it's chilling, and I think he, ultimately, like, he didn't want to continue to. I mean, I don't know if this is like interesting to you to think about, but do you think about what he would, well, I guess he kind of knew what it was going to be like now, but what do you think he would be doing now, or how would he be existing in the world that he kind of predicted?
So, I mean, obviously, the way it ended, there was a level of despair there that seemed like he couldn't get himself over. I made a very popular reel a while back about him and David Berman both kind of existing as this subject at the end of history. And then a lot of people yelled at me about Fukuyama's end of history. I'm just saying that to exist in the 1990s, you existed at a time where it seemed like, well, we figured out how the world works. This is the system that works. Everything's a version of this system. And I think David Foster Wallace struggled with that in a way that is expressing itself more now than it was then. But it's like this idea a lot of Americans suffer from is the idea that, like, well, there's the way that we do it, and that's actually the only way. Everything else is just a different flavor of that thing. And it's why my biggest like obsession, deep dive rabbit hole that I literally could talk about for weeks, and everyone in my life is very tired of me talking about it, but it's like, I think China is the most, as Hegel would say it, Xi Jinping has the world spirit now, because China represents, like, where you stand on what China is doing is how you feel about the world itself. Either they are doing a categorically new thing in competition with what the United States and the West is doing, or theirs is still just a flavor of what the West is doing and no change is really possible. Where you stand on that issue is like, that is the most important thing you can kind of conclude on your own. I'm not going to tell anybody how to think about that, but like,
what do you think about that?
I think they're doing something categorically different. And I think, I mean, I could describe it, I'll speedrunner very quickly. Really, it all boils down to, because they have state control over their banks, and you should read The Economist, Michael Hudson, if anybody's interested in this, their ability to write off debts separates them from the West. In the West, we have to write off debts that are profitable for the people that own the debt itself in the United States. The people that the Federal Reserve are obligated to are private interests. So when we have a housing crisis, we have to bail out the banks, because that's the most profitable thing to do. In China, they write off debts. If they have a bad debt for a construction project, for a renewal project, ultimately, their goal is to try to develop the nation of China, not to make China profitable necessarily. Profit is a necessary part of that development, but like, their ability to be like, yeah, we're going to do a high-speed rail, and they're like, well, it went bankrupt. They're like, well, whatever. You win some, you lose some, But their conclusion is, yeah, great, we lost money on this. Loans lose money. That's the nature of loans. But they have a high-speed rail now. And so we'll see what happens. And it's like, that is, to me, that's the difference. It's like, and I can explain to you like why America's system works the way it was and why it was successful at sort of this like, accomplishing the goals that it was trying to do, but how those contradictions are kind of eating itself. It's just, really, it comes down to the rise of multipolarity, where we lived in a unipolar world where the West, and America specifically, was the only real power. They were the only one that had any say, into a multipolar world where there now has to be some sort of negotiation.
Wow. I can see how that's a rabbit hole that you could go quite far down.
The worst part about it is when people ask me to start from the beginning, I'm like, all right, we're going to go back to the Protestant Reformation.
I mean, I probably would have if this was the beginning of this, and that would have just been this episode. So
Oh man, that is we'll have to do it again at some point in the future because I genuinely could talk about uh China forever, just forever.
Yeah,
I
well, it's
really could.
interesting. I have a lot to
Yeah.
learn. That's really interesting. Well, okay, I'm just trying to figure out which one I want to do. I'm like killing darlings here. Um, I think I want to do. You have this video. I think you used Built to Spill as the example, maybe, but you were talking about, speaking of dichotomous thinking, like the mindset of just like everything, and it's like it's mean to be a hater or being pretentious. Can you talk about that? Because I thought that was really interesting and something I didn't realize like was a relic of the past until until you told me.
Oh, let's see. What was this one again? It was just like talking about hating on stuff.
Yeah, yeah. You were talking about how when we were growing up, it was like the hipster thing was like being pretentious and not, that's uncool or not, as
Oh yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
And then like, there was kind of the mindset of like just like what you like, and yeah, and then how that's different from now.
Yeah, I think part of it was the old categories of monocultures and like subcultures. Like this old model of like you have a monoculture and then the subcultures that sort of dictate like where you fit into that were very like harsh, And back in my day, like you were, if you liked emo music, you were like an emo person. You couldn't just like a couple of emo songs when I was in high school. Like you either liked emo or you didn't. And there was a lot of these like very strong barriers that seem to have been broken down partially just because like there's no point in categorizing anything anymore. There's so many different categories. Everybody has access to everything. Everybody has a record shop at all times, like, and part of it is just like in that world though, right? When you lose that categorization, the benefit of that was that, like, you can like make friends very easy. You have a connection. If you're an emo kid and there's another emo kid, you're probably friends. You share enough of things in common. Nowadays, it's like I don't think it's about exactly what you like. It's more about like, how do you like it? Do you kind of authentically like something or do you not authentically like it? And that sort of is a better categorization. I don't really know if this is exactly the point I was talking about, but it's something I think about all the time. Is like, if something exists, it doesn't exist entirely for negative reasons. And this categorization of subcategories, subgenres of music and stuff like that, it does have an effect of like just making it easier for you to find people to talk music about with. And nowadays, when everybody likes fucking everything, it is a little bit harder because there is no genre. So like, how are these people gonna, relate to each other?
Yeah, the individual monoculture that is our algorithm.
Yeah, it's all just it dissolved so much that it's just brown now. It's
Right.
like we had the primary colors and the secondary colors, and now it's just brown. But it's like it just is. It's not good or bad. It just is this. And the benefits of it, like we were saying earlier, is like the Zoomers, what they're able to do, the tools in their chest to make music are actually much more diverse than millennials were. Because millennials, like, I remember thinking, oh, there's a difference between synth bands and guitar bands, and there's a difference, electronic bands and synth bands and guitar bands. And Zoomers are like, I made half of this on my computer in like math class, and then I put a guitar solo in it and stuff like that. I don't really. It's cool. I thought it sounds cool, and they're right. It does sound cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is great. I mean, I have a plethora of more questions. I guess I'll just ask you one more about cassettes because
Yeah.
you like them. I like them. Is there, do you have a new cassette, or is there, if maybe you want to tell people, how you view them, which I liked how you said they're kind of business cards, but my car plays cassettes, so I have a built-in way to listen to them. But yeah, maybe just riff on that, or give a recommendation of something you've been listening to lately.
Oh, definitely. So what I always liked about cassettes is like, one, it's good to have a little bit of physical media. It's good to say that you actually own music, especially in the digital world where everything's pretty seamless. I always liked that cassettes were side A, side B. So like, if you wanted to pick a different song, you might as well just listen to the first song. If you wanted to get to the second one, it's hard to like pinpoint it exactly. And it's also really the only medium of music that genuinely you can like break in like a leather glove, It sounds a little bit better. You can listen to a brand new copy of Sebados 3 or something like that. But if you have one that's been sitting on your dashboard and like soaked in a bunch of sun rays and now it like runs at 0.78 speed or something like that. That's your version of that album. No one else's gets it like that. There's one of my favorite albums of all time is this Secret Stars album. I do not know the name of it because I just have a digital rip of it that somebody put on an old like WordPress site. And it was just side A, side B of this Secret Stars album, this little known project from Boston, I think. I think the guy eventually became the guy from Karate, which is another project I don't really know anything about. But what I love about that version of it, because I eventually found like the real version of it, but the version that I have is a little bit slower. The tape hiss is a little bit more aggressive. It's a little bit more worn in, and I only have side A, side B. I can't break those things apart, which is like when I started making music, even though I was making digital music, I wanted to replicate that. I wanted my music to be like kind of hard to listen to. I wanted it to be like I didn't want to. I thought everything was being too easy to consume or something like that. So most of my albums are just side A, side B, and it's about 15, 20 minutes of music. That if you like a specific part, it's like, well, you can, remember what minute it was and go to that thing, or just listen to the whole thing. I don't know. It's also how I listen to music. I like listening to albums, and I wanted to just I wanted to be difficult. I wanted this thing to be kind of difficult and to find an audience that wants to be challenged in that way, wants to have a relationship with an album and with some music that isn't going to just be like whatever you want all the time, But yeah, I think in terms of shouting out other bands, that's why I like the other thing too, real quick, is just there's like this definition of lo-fi that is sort of like, oh, it just sounds like a cassette tape. But now the Zoomers are doing a type of lo-fi that's just like really crappy digital compression, because that was their version of lo-fi. And there's analog lo-fi and digital lo-fi. And I think those are two different things that are really interesting to me. I'm getting more and more into digital lo-fi. But in terms of bands and stuff that I want to like shout out, I'll shout out almost entirely bands from the Portland music scene, because I participate in this DIY music scene that just has a lot of really talented artists that aren't really big into self-promotion. They play shows in basements, backyards, wherever they can play. They'll throw festivals on a beach with a generator. They call it Anarchy Beach out here, and it's just like, you only know about it from word of mouth, and it's just a fucking riot. Great time, and the music's awesome. But check out How Strange It Is a great band. My wife plays guitar in that. Vista House, another band that I really like. My wife plays bass in that one, so I'll shout those two out at the beginning. I played a band called Pile Up. There's a band called Non-Binary Girlfriend that's really good. I've made some content recently with a band 40 Feet Tall. If you have a chance to go see 40 Feet Tall play live, 1000% go see them. Those kids are a riot to watch. Let's see. I want to shout out this band Lots of Hands from England that I saw recently at Treefort. They were really cool. I really like their music. That's kind of more Zoomer music, but I just want Zoomers to think I'm cool. Lots of Hands. Those guys are awesome. This is the part where now I'm going to get in trouble for not... Basically, yeah, this is what I'll tell you. There's
like
a
your
label...
Academy Award speech.
It's awful. Bud Tapes is a label in Portland that a friend of mine runs. That's all DIY. It's all finding bands that participate in this DIY community. And they've been putting out tapes. Really, they got really big into it during the pandemic when everything was shutting down. The only thing we had was like once a month, a new Bud Tape release would come out. And that was the music scene for like 2 years here. But just the most earnest, honest people are putting stuff out on that. Emmett, who runs it, they're the most genuine person you're ever going to meet, and they're not looking for that. I don't even think they like that I would be shouting this out right now. They're not looking for that type of attention. They just view this as part of the scene that they can be a participant in, and they like that is the catalog of all the music that I think you should check out if you want to understand what like DIY music sounds like in the Pacific Northwest now.
Oh, I love that. A lot of good recs. Yeah, I'm stoked. I feel like we should just put this on if we really want to make it hard for people. We'll just put this whole conversation on cassettes.
Oh, that would be awesome. I would love
Side A, side B, side C.
Love that. That would crack me up. I mean, I think about it all the time. I just want to keep making things that are like unnecessarily difficult. Just because it makes me happy. That makes me happy. I like being difficult.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's our next thing. Maybe we go on a walk and we really, in one take, we record something, and only the lost basement tapes, or they won't be lost, they'll just be basement, they'll be walking tapes.
Well, we'll keep it in the basement vault for at least 2 years, and then that podcast will come out,
and then put it on the dashboard to really
you gotta get that radiation in there.
Yeah. Oh, it's so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for doing this. And I've never been to Portland, but my friend and boss lives there, and so someday I'll go, and so maybe we can go on a walk there.
Oh, absolutely, definitely. I'll show you all the trees.
Great, love trees, and let me know,
Awesome.
yeah, if you're ever here. But we end by letting. I almost forgot. The show's called Let It Out, so we let out a deep breath. So inhale, let it out.
Oh, that's nice.
That always feels better, yeah.
That was really nice.
Thank you so much. Thanks for doing this. All right, that was my conversation with Kyle. Go watch his videos, go listen to his podcast, subscribe, and he's Smiling Strange. I'll have it all linked, and yeah, let us know what you thought. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear, and I'll be back next week. And if you're new here, head on into the archive if you'd like. I'm Katie. And next week I'm launching a new series, so come back. I'm really back to being consistent here, which feels really good, and I'm stoked to reveal that next week. I've kind of been talking about it in little fits and starts here a little bit for a while, so maybe you can see it coming, but there's a small change coming next week, so I hope to talk to you then, and in the meantime I'll see you maybe on Instagram or something, or Let It Out's Instagram, which is just Let It Out with 3 T's. And yeah, talk to you soon. Thank you, Kyle. It was so nice to talk to you, and yeah, hopefully we do it again. Okay, bye-bye. And listen to his music and the music that he recommends.